You know, you always hear people say that happiness is right around the corner. But for people like you, happiness is in the corner. You know, tons of smoke, huge turbos, loud noises, perfect slides, hitting your apexes. Good news, all of that is not too far away. You can have all of that with just a little bit of money. Because I'm about to tell you about 5 cheap drift cars that can get you started in your drifting career. And speaking of drift machines, why don't you slide on down to that subscribe button and turn on the little bell so you can keep catching ideal content as it comes your way. All right, let's swap in a new set of tires and let's go. All right, if you're already a fan of drifting and are on YouTube, which I'm gonna guess you are since you're watching this video, you are definitely aware of the Nissan 240SX or Silvia. Back in young Squiddy's days, this was the ideal choice for cheap drift car. You could usually pick these things up for like 2 or 3 grand. These days, they might not be your first choice, but we'll get to that in a second. Why they should be a good choice for you is they're rear-wheel drive, they're lightweight, there are tons of parts to modify them, and they're pretty well balanced. Like I said before, the 240SX is called the Silvia in other places like Japan, where it came from. And they really blew up in the 90s as drift culture really took off in Japan. It was kind of a perfect storm. You had these cheap, light, rear-wheel drive, fun little cars, and a sport that's mostly broke dudes like me. It was a match made in heaven. And so the 240SX and Silvias took off in the 90s and the early 2000s. Now, it made a lot of sense in Japan because these things came with a 2.0-liter turbo engine called the SR20 DET. Sadly, over here in the States, they gave us a truck motor, the 2.4-liter KA24DE. Notice there's no T? There's no turbo. Now, the American KA24 had plenty of power to provide for some, you know, fun light drifting, maybe in the rain, and they're damn near indestructible, making for a combination that still slides like butter in a hot pan. As a testament to that KA24's reliability, the one in my drift car had over 330,000 miles in it before I swapped into an SR20. And a good 100,000 of that was some pretty rough driving by me. Not that it'll ever happen, but if that KA24 does decide to quit on you, the engine bay of an S13 is pretty roomy, so there's a lot of fun little options you can put in there. The easiest way is put in the Japanese power plant, the SR20, and now you have a Silvia that God intended. But it doesn't just stop there. If you want more growl, you can put an LS V8 in there. Or hell, people have even put the RB26 DETT out of the R34 in the engine bay of an S13. Pretty much anything goes. And today, parts for these are still pretty widely available. Clean examples of 240s in junkyards might be dying out though. Entire Formula Drift careers have been started on the Nissan 240SX. And yours can too, because they're still affordable. Sadly, it's almost impossible to find a stock one, but the plus side is you can find a ton of already modified ones that'll save you a little dough. Like this S13 that looks like it's running a turbo thanks to that intercooler up front, that comes in at just 7,500 bucks. This looks like a pretty much drift-ready S13, so you can save the money you would have spent on mods and spend it on a little track time. You want to buy this S13 or other 240SXs or any other car on this list? We have links to AutoTEMPEST down below of all of the cars in this video, so you can find the ideal drift car for you. Now, I have a question. What is the first car that comes to your mind when you think of drifting? For a lot of you, if you grew up on anime like me, you're gonna answer the Corolla AE86, also known here in the States as the Corolla GTS. This quirky little car became synonymous with the sport of drifting thanks to an anime in Japan called Initial D. Now, Corolla is not a name we associate with rear-wheel drive drifting today. And the AE86 Corolla was kind of the last of a dying breed. It's the last rear-wheel drive Corolla. Now, in today's world of high-end, 500 horsepower, crazy Japanese drift machines, the measly little AE86 Corolla gets overshadowed a lot. But it still has a few tricks up its sleeve. And namely, those tricks are value and weight. You see, back in the 90s, when drifting was just taking off, you'd have to be pretty stupid to buy a brand new FDRX7 and go thrash it on a mountainside. Instead, you want something cheap, maneuverable, lightweight, doesn't need a lot of horsepower. You wanted yourself a Corolla AE86. It's a car practically designed for drifting in the mountains of Japan. It's got near perfect weight distribution. It will devour corners. But what it won't be doing is devouring tires, because the Corolla isn't exactly the most powerful car on this list. In stock form, the tiny little 4AGE motor only puts out about 112 horsepower, and to the wheels, it's going to be a little less than that. But the 4AGE is kind of the little engine that could. This thing loves to scream in the high revs, and it'll do it until the end of time. These things are just unkillable. Combined with the AE86's controllable chassis and its light weight of only 2,300 pounds, means the 86 is like a perfect beginner's drift car because it's just so controllable. You really can't get in trouble with it. And it really teaches you the value of momentum. That's going fast and staying fast. Now at this point, this is essentially a collector's car. So prices ain't that cheap, especially for clean models. We were able to find this red Corolla GTS for just 8,600 bucks. Yeah, I know, a 35-year-old Japanese car for 10 grand? It's kind of insane. Well, welcome to the world of drift tax. You know, once a car gets popular and gets used for the sport, clean examples of them skyrocket in price. All right, if your budget's a little tighter, what's a little Japanese drift car you can get started in for a little bit less money? A little newer, maybe a little more power? Well, you know what the answer is. It's always the answer, the Mazda Miata. This is probably the most versatile car on this list. You just cannot go wrong with the level of engineering in the Mazda Miata. Again, we have a combination of 4 cylinders and no weight. The perfect recipe of a great drift car or even just sports car in general. Why is a Miata a good drift car? Well, it's all about that body. It's really well balanced and it is ultra lightweight. How lightweight? Just 2,100 pounds. That's less than the Corolla. It's probably because it doesn't have a top. And it doesn't just stop there. If you want to strip it down to its roots, take off its AC, some door panels, all the stuff you don't need, you can get a Miata down to like 1,700 pounds. The Miata actually becomes a corner-slaying monster, making it a great choice and one of our more affordable choices on this list, when you can even get a second-generation Miata, like this silver one, and that's for a really good example. There are dirty, messed up, trashed up Miatas that you can get for a lot cheaper, like 2 or 3 grand. But I'm not going to recommend them to you. And with how cheap you got it, that means you have plenty of money left over to spend on some modifications. Coilovers, maybe a turbo, some new wheels. The world's your oyster with a Miata. And as you already know, we here at Ideal love the Miata. But there are just so many different ones to choose from the NA all the way to the newer NDs. It can all be pretty overwhelming. So we made a video on which chassis is right for you. Up here, click up here. 130 horsepower, 112 horsepower. Everything on our list so far has been pretty weak. And we're talking about tire slaying here. We're talking about breaking stuff loose, pumping out a ton of smoke. What's something that might have a little more horsepower for the money? Well, for that, we're going to talk about the fairest lady of them all, the Nissan 350Z. Unless you've been like living under a rock your whole life, you're probably pretty well aware of the 350Z. They are everywhere, and they are quickly becoming a modern classic, especially thanks to its appearance in films like Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. And it's for good reason. The 350Z is rocking an amazing chassis, a 6-speed manual, and a stout 300 horsepower 6-cylinder under the hood. And of course, all of that power is going to the rear wheels, which is why it's on this list. Horsepower, rear-wheel drive, you now have a drift car. But even outside of drifting, a 350Z makes a really good car. Good horsepower, it looks decent, tons of aftermarket support, and best of all, kind of affordable. If the 350Z sounds like a good drift car for you, we were able to find this orange one with a manual transmission for only 6 grand. That's a hell of a lot of car for 6 grand when you look at the other cars in this list. And actually is probably one of the best deals in used Japanese cars if you're gonna build a track car right now. And I know, not everyone is a fan of old Japanese crap cars. What about some European crap cars? Well, let's take a trip across the Atlantic to Germany and talk about the BMW E46 330 Ci. Now I know some longtime fans of Ideal's ears perked up when they heard the words E46, because I definitely could have been talking about the E46 M3. And if you want to know about the E46 M3, watch this video up here that Brad made. It's a fantastic car to buy right now. A little outside of our price range here. So we have the next best thing, the 330 Ci. It's got a similar balanced chassis, but comes in a lot more affordable than the M3, with the major difference being what's under the hood. You're only getting a 3-liter inline 6, which is only like 0.2 liters off from the M3. Either way, it still puts down respectable power to the rear wheels. and people have been known to throw a turbo on them and make it even more of a tire-slaying beast, quickly surpassing even E46 M3 horsepower numbers. And one thing nobody's talking about, without that M3 badge on the tail, you're gonna save a ton on your car insurance, which, if you're a drifter, I bet you're gonna use at some point, because crashing is inevitable. And the E46 still looks good to this day, especially sideways and putting out a bunch of smoke. And unlike most of the cars on this list, the 330 Ci is going to be one hell of a comfortable car driving to and from the racetrack. With a fully leather interior, nice materials throughout, a decent stereo system, it's kind of the total package. But it isn't the most reliable car on this list. But you're a drifter, you're going to get your hands dirty on any of these cars. The BMW E46 330 Ci is a great alternative to those not seeking to get anything from the land of the rising sun. And with low mileage examples going for around 7 grand, they're seriously like a great deal, even just as like a normal daily driver. From everything I've seen in the drifting scene recently, used BMWs are quickly becoming the new 240SXs of my time. So hop on the bandwagon now, before the drift tax hits. Because soon, cars like the 330 Ci could actually be worth more than you bought them for. That is, if you don't tear them apart and destroy them drifting, which I encourage you do. Now, this was a short list. What did we leave off? What are your surprisingly affordable rear-wheel drive first drift cars that we should have mentioned? And after you've let us know that down below, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the little bell, and give the video a like, because, you know, it's nice. After that, check out some more Ideal content, and as always, keep living the ideal lifestyle.